Duje tamche mita ba, sache tamche dugyo wa, chu tamche dongshin dame ba, nyanyan le deba shiwa ho. All composite things are impermanent. All contaminated things are of the nature of suffering. All phenomena are the nature of emptiness and selflessness. Transcending sorrow is peace. The three roots from the Lam Rim. Death will come and nothing can stop it. We don't know when we're going to die. The only thing that will help us at the time of death is the Dharma. Lai ke dan lu dan no jin ke drubun da da mi ke nan dan zhou wa kun ji dra nan ji tsam pa dan che ke du da gi chu ten do. In the language of the gods, Nagas and Yakshas, in the language of demons and of humans too, and however many kinds of speech there may be, I shall proclaim the Dharma in the language of all. Dipa chiang mija shing gewa bonzon zomba je rangi semni yonsu tu deni sanje demba yin. Abandon evil, engage in perfect virtuous actions, subdue your mind thoroughly. This is the teaching of the Buddha. So, welcome everyone to Buddha Center. It's wonderful to see all of you here tonight. Let's begin with setting the most magnificent motivation in the universe. We see from the Vinaya Sutra, where it says, abandon evil and engage in perfect virtuous actions. When we look at what are perfect virtuous actions, or the perfection of our actions, we see there's resultant perfection and actual causal perfection. And when we engage in virtue, the highest motivation that we can engage in is bodhicitta. And what makes it a causal perfection is if the action is done, such as generosity or ethics or patience, while having the mind that aspires to enlightenment. So this then makes that virtuous activity that you engage in a perfect virtuous activity because it's a causal perfection that will lead to the result of perfection, which is Buddhahood. So when we say abandon evil, abandon harming others, want to be free from cyclic existence. And when we say engage in perfect virtues, this means engage in things with this mind of bodhicitta. And once you actually generate this mind, you're considered a child of the conqueror. You're considered a child of the Buddha. You're worthy of veneration of all the gods and all of the humans. So this mind is so incredible because without it, one isn't doing what it takes to actually achieve perfection. And if we're looking for freedom from suffering altogether and the highest amount of happiness attainable, alongside being the most reliable guide in the universe, the highest amount of happiness attainable and the highest guide in the universe, the most reliable guide in the universe, these two things occur at the same time, and that's called Buddhahood. So what we're doing here week after week, and we've been doing now for almost 2 years, is learning in every possible way how we would actually generate this mind that we say, let's begin the teaching by setting the most excellent motivation in the universe, bodhicitta, the central pillar of the Mahayana, as Lama Tsongkhapa calls it, the highest ideal of the Mahayana, as Arya Nagarjuna calls it, in the commentary on the awakening mind. And Bodhisattva Shantideva makes so many praises in the benefits of bodhicitta section in the first chapter. So we see that this mind is just so precious and so incredible, but it is in direct contradiction with the way that someone like myself normally thinks, because I believe that cherishing myself is the key to my happiness. And bodhicitta requires me to disregard myself and actually cherish others in the same way that I would myself, and not disregard myself in a way where I'm just trying to keep myself from good things so that I can then suffer and get rid of karma, not in a way that some other traditions would say in sort of of a penance. It's a switch in an attitude. This attitude that I normally drives me into bad behaviors switches around and it drives me then towards love and towards helping others because it's driven by love and compassion. Um, so it's amazing that we have instructions from Buddha Shakyamuni and the Indian Pandits and all of the incredible Tibetan commentators that we study within our tradition. We have all of this information from which to work with and try to undo these very tight knots in our mind that are tied up with all kinds of wrong ideas. And as we loosen them, the wrong ideas loosen and our mind starts to tally more with the actual reality. Our mind thinks that cherishing ourselves is the way to get to the highest amount of happiness, but that doesn't tally with reality because all the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas cherish others more than themselves. We cherish ourselves, and it's so clear, as Bodhisattva Shantideva says, that look at the difference between myself and a Buddha. So my way of going about things hasn't proven to produce what I've wanted it to, this happiness that I've been seeking through this self-cherishing way. Whereas when I look at those enlightened beings who switched that attitude, they achieved what I've been looking for and haven't been able to do. So because this idea that I have to generate that'll become a main mind called bodhicitta is in such direct opposition with my way of thinking since beginningless time, it takes an enormous amount of information, an enormous amount of examples and reasoning and logic, complete information, systematic information, as Geshe Dorji Damdul would say, to attack this thing in my mind that's been wrong since the beginning about how I should think about you in relation to me, how I should think about everyone else in relation to me. So we went through the 7-point cause and effect for realizing the mind that aspires to enlightenment, passed down from Buddha Shakyamuni to Lord Maitreya and Arya Sangha, down through the extensive deeds lineage in great detail, to learn about this conclusion that we discover that it makes no sense to do anything but want to become a Buddha for the sake of all sentient beings. And now we did that for a year and a half with all the commentaries that we could possibly find. And now we're doing the same thing with equalizing and exchanging self with others practice, passed down from Buddha Shakyamuni to Arya Manjushri, to Arya Nagarjuna, down through the profound view lineage, Bodhisattva Shantideva, and so forth, both lineages going through Lama Sarlimpa, Lord Atisha, Geshe Drontompa, and then, down through all of the enlightened masters in the Tibetan tradition into our very, very fortunate hands, laps, ears. And we're so lucky to have these instructions because I found in my own practice that this wealth of information, because I have a wealth of wrongness within my mind, its wisdom is kind of in direct opposition with the wrong stuff. So the more wisdoms I put into my mind, the more wrong stuff that gets opposed. And if it gets opposed enough, it gets conquered. And as Bodhisattva Shantideva says in the guide, that, a war, there's going to be casualties, you'll get hurt. But in the end, so this isn't going to be an easy journey. This is going to hurt. It's going to be painful to try to give up our addictions to ourself, our addictions to our normal ways of being. But like any addiction, it doesn't prove to provide us with the happiness that we're looking for. And getting out of the addiction provides us with the freedom. So we don't have the freedom now because of the constriction of our self-grasping ignorance. We don't have freedom when we're addicted to something because it pulls us so quickly towards that object that we can't think of anything else. Samsara does this to us. So it's very deceitful, it's cunning, it's a very strange thing that our mind does because of the ignorance that just saturates it. And then we react from the platform of a false premise of an I, of an intrinsically existent self of person and phenomena. And from that false premise, we then make decisions that don't make sense if they're decisions we're making to get what we're looking for, happiness and freedom from suffering. But those decisions seem to make sense because the starting place that we're starting from is wrong. So the sensible thing, it makes sense if the wrong thing was right. But the wrong thing's wrong, so it doesn't make sense. But we don't know the wrong thing is wrong because we don't know, we think that the wrong thing is right. We think that we intrinsically exist. And then because of that, we think it makes sense to take care of this intrinsically existent thing and have aversion for other. So this is a shift that we have to figure out how to do, and that's what we're trying so hard to do. Because if we want to become a Buddha, we have to generate bodhicitta. And if we want to generate bodhicitta, we have to generate these steps that actually cause it. Bodhicitta is a result. It's caused by the six causes with a pre-step of the 7-point cause and effect. And it's caused by depending on how you enumerate it, the seven or eight steps of the equalizing, exchanging self with others practice that then are causes that lead to the ninth of, or depending on how you enumerate it, the eighth result of bodhicitta. So we're going to say ninth. We're not going to say depending on how you enumerate it. We're going to go with seven and nine, and looking at them specifically, six causes of the 7-point cause and effect, and eight causes in terms of the equalizing, exchanging self with others practice. So six causes, 7-point cause and effect, one result, making for seven. And then the equalizing, exchanging self with others practice, eight causes, one result, making for a total of nine. So that's how, when we're going to be speaking about these ways to meditate on it, there's different ways to enumerate it. It's not, the enumeration's not even clear unless you've heard other enumerations in the Lamrim Chemo. So the most important thing to do, the one thing you have to get right, is to try to figure out that we all equally want happiness, don't want suffering. We're all equally empty of intrinsic existence, and the self-cherishing attitude stinks. And cherishing others will lead us to bliss. And then we go from there. These are the things that we're starting to learn about in this equalizing, exchanging self with others practice. So without further ado, I just want to say thank you to everyone for being on this evening and allowing me to explain these things that I've heard over the time that I've studied, over around 30 years now. And I was so fortunate to spend 25 years with Namgyal Khensur Geshe Wangdak Rinpoche and be blessed to hear so many things. When I say blessed, allow my mind to make contact with the accurate information to be able to start to ripen. A blessing means to transform your magnificent potential. It doesn't mean something. It means you have a potential here, that there's a cooperating condition that can take place of a teacher, that then that potential can manifest because the correct information is attacking its opponent, the foe. When we look at that name, foe destroyer, the foe being the afflictions that are being destroyed in the lesser vehicle, or Hinayana, or the individual liberation vehicle, and the foe for the bodhisattva, foe destroyer, would be the afflictions as well as the obstructions to omniscience, those subtle self-cherishing attitudes. So we see these are not our friends, yet since beginningless time, we've called them our friends. And what do we do with friends? We embrace friends. And we think that, oh, if we, just put others' needs before our own, that's like crazy. So we have to push that idea away because that doesn't allow us to embrace our friend. When we start to care for someone else, our friend that we're embracing, called self-cherishing attitude, gets really upset with us and finds every way possible to make sure that cherishing we're getting something out of. And a bodhisattva is not looking for anything except you to have happiness and not have suffering, and figuring out ways to make that occur, but doing it in a smart way so that he or she is allowing you to evolve and not just giving you the suffering of suffering, contaminated happiness, a piece of chocolate. Unless it's a piece of chocolate while they're saying, hey, You know this is impermanent. What does that mean? It means it's momentarily changing. It will be born, it will abide, it will cease. Enjoy your chocolate. So there's a skillful means that a being who puts others' needs before their own naturally can manifest because their minds can stretch. Their mind isn't so just absolutely, like we talked about last week, in a prison, just wrapped up so tight that you can't even get your hand out of it because the self-cherishing attitude is like a concrete wall that won't allow you to extend your hand to another sentient being and feel the warmth and feel the connection that is a lot of times for many of us some of the most high point feelings of happiness that can occur are with human connection. So, with that being said, let's imagine all of the Buddhas in the space in front of us who've figured this out, who've done exactly what we need to do, what we can do, uh, in order to achieve the goal of a freedom from the afflictive obstructions and the obstructions not to omniscience. These Buddhas relied upon the Bodhisattva path. They became Bodhisattvas in the way that we're talking about this evening. How? By getting bodhicitta. And the way that we talked about the medium scope, the teaching shared in common with the beings of medium capacity. How to get renunciation that serves as the basis for the generation of bodhicitta. So all of these beings that we're imagining in the space in front of us that are looking into our eyes, loving like a mother would her only child, or looking into your eyes like the most loving person has ever looked into them that you thought had nothing to gain, wasn't looking for anything from you, but for you to be happy and to be free from suffering. Whoever that being is that you can use as a reference. If it's a samsaric being, there's no way to really even imagine it in a true way. If you've had teachers, if you've been around His Holiness the Dalai Lama, Buddhas, then you know what this means. The way that they look into your eyes, like, I will do anything for you to get out of this awful feeling that you have day and night. And you won't believe me if I just tell you directly. So I've got to do all of this funny stuff to teach you because you don't have the hardware for my software. So I have to upgrade you with all of these. Sometimes it seems silly things that the lamas will do in our presence because they care so much about us. So those beings in the space in front of us, imagine they're there. Because whenever we invoke the merit field arrives. We just don't have the karma right now to see it. Lama Tsongkhapa invoked the merit field, and they would come one by one, and he would greet them and pay homage as he invited them. And he would see them, and we invite them. We don't see them, but we can visualize them. Eventually, that visualization will turn into an actual perception of the being in various different ways. But now we don't have that capacity. But imagine the Buddha Shakyamuni in the space in front of you, His Holiness the Dalai Lama Chen Rezig in our world right now. Imagining your root lamas, I'm imagining Namgyal Khensur Geshe Wangdak Rinpoche, Geshe Lobsang Gonpo Rinpoche, Dema Locho Rinpoche, Khensur Lobsang Gyatso Rinpoche, Gen Jeffrey Hopkins, Geshe Dorji Damdul Rinpoche, Umse Geshe Agha Rinpoche. So fortunate, and many other teachers I've received some teachings from. Geshe Yeshe Tapke Rinpoche, just incredible giants of philosophy that we have in our world, and we're so fortunate. Please take advantage while we have this life, because nothing's going to help us but Dharma, the third root in the Lam Rim. And we have very qualified teachers of the truth of suchness in our world right now. Please take advantage of it. Please take advantage of it, because the Buddhas don't wash away the negativities of beings, nor do they remove their miseries with their hands. They don't transfer their realizations. They teach the truth of suchness. And we have suchness teachers that are very qualified in our world right now. And it would be like wasting our life, not using our life, like going to a diamond island when we're poor and leaving without any jewels because we want to get home. Yeah. That's how we act, right? Isn't it? And then we have, imagine all of these incredible, incredible beings, the extensive deeds lineage, profound view lineage, the lineage of blessings, Nyingma, Sakya, Kaju, all of these incredible beings, the old Kadampa masters. We're so fortunate. Just imagine them in the space of the highest yoga tantra deities, performance tantra deities, action tantra deities, 35 Buddhas, the protectors, all of these beings in the space in front of us. We are saying we're going to be the ones who want this information in our mind, which means we want to hold the Dharma. And when we want to hold the Dharma, those beings who protect the Dharma are our protectors. So imagine they're all in the space in front of us, and now invite every single sentient being here to be our guest. We recited from the King of Prayers this beautiful aspiration to be able to proclaim the Dharma in the language of all. So now imagine that all of the sentient beings that you invite, as I'm inviting, are able to hear the teachings, and they're hearing them in their language at their aptitude. They're hearing exactly what they need to hear in order for them to evolve. Imagine that that's actually happening and that their minds are being blessed, meaning their own potential is being transformed. Their own magnificent potential is being transformed because you're guiding them, you're bringing them to a place that you are at in order to discover what you need to discover in order to realize the truth of suchness as a bodhisattva, really. Realize ultimate bodhicitta again and again and again, so that you then cross the 10th bodhisattva ground into the resultant ground of Buddhahood. This is the name of the game. This is what we're trying to do here. We're trying to get to the point where we start creating perfect virtues. The perfect virtues, or the virtues, one could say, if we're talking about causal perfection, are driven by bodhicitta. The engaged bodhicitta is where you start working on the 6 and the 10 perfections. Once you generate bodhicitta, you say, okay, now I'm going to become a Buddha for the sake of all sentient beings. Let's start working. And you start working through the 6 and 10 perfections in the 18 root and 46 secondary bodhisattva vows. So, wow, we have this information. And who would ever think that, when I was riding around on my BMX bike and never still feeling satisfied, even though I had a shiny one, um, that this was going to, the BMX bike or a better one, or the one that, there was a professional BMX bike racer, I remember, um, in my town, and he had like this really expensive bike. And I had a really nice bike compared to other bicycle standards at the time. But my bike, as soon as I saw his bike, especially the way he rode it, I felt inadequate. My bike felt inadequate. And I just remember this is just this little kid in 4th grade. I remember him riding around on this thing that just wasn't good enough. That was better than, and there's some other poor kid hates his bike because mine's so shiny, right? And little did I know that there was none of the bikes were going to help me at all. Yeah. Actually, caring, if I gave my bike to the guy with the junkier bike, that would have made me happier and took his bike. How would I have known? But I think because I have covetousness, that it would make sense maybe to steal that guy's bike. You see how the self-centered attitude works. And I didn't steal anybody's bike. And I'm trying to speak of this in a gross way. I don't think of stealing people's things anymore, or really want anybody's anything, to be frank. But I can see times in my life when I wasn't for 30 years subjected to this information and thought about this information a lot, where yeah, I remember a time where I thought that the stuff, even when I was being subjected to this information, was going to be what did it. Um, and here we are inviting everyone. We all have the same problem. We all want happiness. We all want to be free from suffering. Suffering is painful. It should be removed. Happiness is good. It should be achieved. Why wouldn't we want beings to be brought to happiness? They're sentient beings. If we look at the whole, we're all sentient beings. We should be happiness getters and suffering removers. And we like when others try to remove our suffering and make us happy. These are all things that the Lojong teachings teach us to try to crack this concrete, awful thing that's holding us. And inside it, there's a concreter, awefuler thing that is the one to blame for everything. And in the Lojong teachings, they talk about these two as if they're like companions, one thing. If we get philosophical, we know they're not one thing. Self-cherishing attitude and self-grasping ignorance are not one thing. But when we look at how the mind training teachings show us how all of our decisions that are bad are based on the self-cherishing attitude, you can see how we can name the one to blame for anything as a self-cherishing attitude and know that it's evil kind of, the thing that gives it propulsion is the self-grasping ignorance, which is a misidentification. But it's not an affliction, the self-cherishing attitude, because it's still there for arhats in an abiding nirvana. Think about it. Okay, so imagine you bring friends, neutrals, enemies, people you find difficult, bring them all here. Recognize no one with bias has ever become a Buddha. No one with bias has ever become a Bodhisattva. Every single sentient being in the universe is taking care of us when we were vulnerable. Everyone in the universe who's acting in weird ways, if they aren't pretending to because they're Buddhas, are all driven by self-grasping ignorance, a self-cherishing attitude. They are under control of it. They are not free. They're not just saying, okay, this morning I'm going to wake up, um, because they're not philosophically coming up with a reason to yell at us. It's just naturally occurring. They're not philosophically coming up with a reason to break into our homes. They're just trying to get happiness and get free from suffering like we've been doing since beginningless time. And their BMX bike didn't work either. All of these addictions that we have, we want to just think that ours isn't as dirty as everybody else's. Well, they do that. I just like to binge watch stuff, but I don't drink. It's all Rinpoche made that so clear to me year after year. Like, get off your high horse with your problems because everyone has self-grasping ignorance, and it's pride to think you're the worst of the worst. That's just such amazing, amazing wisdom. Okay, so imagine you bring hell, hungry ghost, animal, human, demigods, and gods here. Every being, every sentient being here. And imagine even the high bodhisattvas are here. And you've brought them here just kind of like, excuse me, ma'am, excuse me, sir. There's something going on here, and they're doing it in the language of all beings and its aptitudes of all beings. So there's something here that I think can help you too, ma'am, sir. To the high bodhisattvas you're inviting here, who are way, way above my pay grade. But if I when I become a Buddha, I'll be able to guide a ninth, eighth, whatever these high ground bodhisattvas, um, in subtle ways and in gross ways. So imagine we bring all of these beings here in order to experience a forward movement, a maturation. We know we have proliferating Buddha nature and we have natural Buddha nature. And we imagine that the beings are all here for the same reason we are, to proliferate, to mature, so that we can eventually mature enough so that our mind is this mind that's thinking and stuff is that's the proliferating Buddha nature, the mind that's defiled, but that has good things. Those good things can mature. The defilements go away, and once those good things are fully matured, my mind will be called the wisdom Dharmakaya, and the emptiness of my messed up mind now that has good parts that can improve, will then be alongside, because of the two natures, conventional and ultimate truth, a perfected wisdom Dharmakaya, and that will then be the emptiness of intrinsic existence of the wisdom Dharmakaya. So that'll be me. That'll be the two natures of who I am. The truth body and the emptiness of the truth body. And then we can divide the bodies into the enjoyment and emanation body and so forth. And then we can do the two actual natural bodies, but we're not going to do that this evening. We're just inviting beings here, and now we're imagining that they're experiencing this love from the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, and now imagine that the space in front of us transforms into Rajagriha at Vulture Peak Mountain, where the Heart Sutra was taught, where the Buddha taught that nothing exists intrinsically. We know that compassion devoid of the wisdom realizing emptiness, as Lama Tsongkhapa says, will never allow us to become enlightened. If we meditated on compassion and had the perfect, the greatest compassion a sentient being could have, without emptiness for, eons, we wouldn't become enlightened, because we need the two wings of the bird. We need method and wisdom in order to become enlightened. So we know that we need bodhicitta, which is a desire to become a Buddha for the sake of all sentient beings, the ripening paths. We need the ripening paths of renunciation and the concentrations and so forth. Many, many ripening paths that we need to work on, caring for others and so forth. And then the liberating path that has to be united with. Compassion for eons won't get you liberated. It has to be united with a liberating path. So we need both ripening path, which is method, and a liberating path, which is wisdom. And if we can unite those two, we can become a Buddha. So we're talking about the Mahayana vehicle right now, so we can become a Buddha. So that unity is two different kinds of studies that we need to do. The bodhicitta studies are something that we can be a little bit more flexible about, and we can read so many different commentaries and so many different opinions about how we could care about others more and reasons we should, and how to get love and wanting others to be happy in a speedier way. There's so many different ways to go about that. We won't really get hurt unless they're nihilistic ways. We're not going to really get hurt with the reasonings we find in the texts about how to get bodhicitta. But the view of emptiness is a little different. The liberating path is, well, I guess a lot different. We need really specific systematic information that's going to be very rigorously understood through the lens of the tenet systems. Because the Buddha said so many different things. The Buddha gave figurative teachings or interpretable teachings, and then gave definitive teachings. And even at the first turning of the wheel of Dharma, where the Buddha taught the Four Noble Truths, he said something about the nature of reality that wasn't true, because the Buddha always taught to scope and was teaching to the tenet holders of the Vaibhashika and Sautrantika system primarily, and that subject matter was for them. And the way that the Four Noble Truths were explained in such a way that the Buddha said the Four Noble Truths exist truly. And this was in order for them to take the next step to evolve further for those particular participants at the first turning of the wheel of Dharma, where the Buddha really didn't go beyond the selflessness of person and not the intrinsic existence of person selflessness, the selflessness of permanent unitary independent self and an autonomous substantially real self. So the Buddha taught a coarse form of selflessness that didn't fully negate the object of negation. It was a minimalist inadequacy in terms of the view, in terms of the middle way, and there was stuff left over that would one still, if that was the final thought, one would still grasp at an extreme of absolutism. Because the phenomena other than the self of person isn't touched, and actually the intrinsically existent self of person isn't touched with negating autonomous substantial reality. Long story. But all of those things that I'm saying are very important and are required to understand emptiness and are a staircase to get to exactly what this fragile thing called existence is. Because things exist according to Lord Buddha. Buddha never said that things don't exist, and if we say that things don't exist, we're in contradiction with what the Buddha is teaching. But the Buddha is saying that things don't intrinsically exist, so we have to find out what the differentiation is between intrinsic existence and what's the mode of existence if it's not intrinsic existence. A lot of words. Again, all makes sense though if you study emptiness. So, what's the mode of existence? Well, if I think the mode of existence is intrinsic existence, independent existence, existence from my own side, not an existence that's merely imputed independence upon a collection of among the 4 or 5 aggregates that serve as a basis of designation, that's a real way. So if I think there's a way of existence that isn't just a mere imputation independence upon some parts, then I should look for that way of existence. And that's what the Heart Sutra is doing. It's the conclusion of that looking for that way. If I think things intrinsically exist from their own side independently and don't require mere and aren't dependent on mere imputation, dependent on a collection, then where is this thing that I'm so sure is there, this self that intrinsically exists from its own side that I experience when someone goes boo and scares me, or I experience when I'm being accused of something that I didn't do. I feel this very strong sense of I, or when I'm hurt and my very strong sense of I, there's a moving sense of I that I experience. But when I'm experiencing it, I'll tell you that it's definitely there and it exists from its own side on its own. And if that's the case, Buddha says we should perform ultimate analysis on it, which means move closer and closer to this object, this person that I find to be intrinsically existent, and see if it exists intrinsically among its parts or something separate from its parts. And then once we do that exercise where we say, okay, where is this Jeff that exists intrinsically? Not the Jeff that's just talking. That's the conventional truth, Jeff. And there's a mode of existence I'm getting wrong about that too, which will get cleaned up after I understand emptiness. But we're talking about, is there something that's findable, that's like a soul, an intrinsically existent Jeff? So I have to see, there's only so many places Jeff could be, an intrinsically independent thing that I feel so strongly about and protect so strongly, that doesn't depend on anything, that isn't dependent on you. So I bifurcate. I don't need you, right? I'm not dependent on you. So where is this thing that's not dependent? So when I look in my parts, I look for it within the 6 constituents, as Arya Nagarjuna says. Arya Nagarjuna says it's not from the person is not the earth, the person is not the water, nor the air, the fire or the air, or the conscious, or the space, or the consciousness, or the collection of these. Where is this person? So when we go, what's Arya Nagarjuna saying that I flubbed the quote up a little bit on, but not really. He's saying that, okay, if this person that exists intrinsically that you experience, when you're being accused of something you didn't do, is there, that's so real and concrete, that isn't just a superimposition of your mind, then where is it? So then you start to look, is it my body? So, okay, is it my blood? Is it my water? Chew. No. Is it my may? Is it my heat? Is it my warmth? No. Am I warmth? Am I water? Am I blood? Am I bones? Okay, so I'm looking for this I that's reacting. No, the bones, that's not it. It's not the blood that's like, blah, I didn't do it. It's not the air going, I didn't do it. Okay, sachu. It's not the heat of my body, my warmth, sa. So it's not my earth. It's so funny. I have to think in Tibetan, sachu melung, for earth, water, fire, wind, and then space. Is it the space in between all of my body, allowing for my body to be here, all those spaces? My space doesn't go, ah, okay. So am I my mind? Okay, is Jeff my mind? Okay, that feels like it because my mind reacts. But Jeff's a male, and that's dependent upon the body. So how can I say that it's the mind? Yeah, I'm having a feeling occur. My mind is the intention, the setter, the feeler. But then again, there's all of these other things. When I walk into a room, no one's going to say, "Oh, there's Jeff. His mind's here." No one. It doesn't make any sense. So I can't say, "Oh, this Jeff is intrinsically here in the mind," because Jeff doesn't make any sense without all of the other stuff. So okay, so it's not there, and then okay, if it's not in the earth, water, fire, wind, or space element, I am a derivative of those things in terms of all of my physicality. And then my mental consciousness is the sixth constituent. And for Jeff to be here, it can't just sit independently without the other parts to be a collection that's merely imputed as Jeff. You'll never be able to be comfortable with, oh, that's Jeff's mind, so he's here. No one says that. You don't think that. I don't think that. So we just wiped out everything from my side that could be intrinsically me that doesn't depend. So the only other option is something outside of me, something outside of what's right here. And that's preposterous. Something that's like what? A puppeteer standing above Jeff? That's a self that's making all this stuff, do all this stuff. Then none of this, not my earth, not my water, not my fire, not my wind, not my space, not my consciousness, none of this stuff. There's something operating all of the derivatives in the consciousness that's another self. So we negate the idea that the self is something separate from the aggregates. We negate the idea that the self, intrinsic self, is something one with the aggregates. And the entailment of emptiness is that if something intrinsically exists, it must be intrinsically one with or intrinsically different from the aggregates. And if we cannot find that thing that is intrinsically one or intrinsically indifferent, then the entailment of emptiness is that that thing doesn't intrinsically exist. So the no statements in the Sutra of the Heart of Transcendent Knowledge are merely saying that the Buddha is saying, hey, I did this ultimate analysis and I found no intrinsically existent aggregates, no intrinsically existent Four Noble Truths, no intrinsically existent Buddha, no intrinsically existent nothing. There is no phenomena in the universe that intrinsically exists. And things that don't exist don't intrinsically exist for that matter. But we always posit emptiness in relation to a phenomena. But in debate, people get, kind of sassy sometimes and say, oh, things that don't exist intrinsically exist? No, they don't intrinsically exist. Okay. All right. So imagine now the Sutra of the Heart of Transcendent Knowledge is when we said the Buddha taught interpretable and definitive, or figurative and definitive. This is the second turning of the wheel of Dharma where Buddha meant what he said. The Buddha was being very definitive when he said that nothing in the universe intrinsically exists, and he wasn't kidding around. He wasn't he was teaching specifically to the Madhyamaka view holder, which is and really specifically Prasangika, because Prasangika is the only view that is the accurate view of the nature of reality. And we look at the tenet systems, you have to come to that conclusion. The tenets even Gen Hopkins says he really regretted coming up with that translation, tenets. It should be more established conclusions, a ceiling of the practitioner. Like, this is the established conclusion. I'm a tenet holder of this. This is as far as I can go. This is the ceiling of my view. And we see with the tenets, Vaibhashika, Sautrantika, Chittamantra, and Madhyamaka, that they have ceilings, and that if you look at the views ahead of them, those ceilings are cracked. But those practitioners aren't necessarily at the scope to be able to crack that ceiling themselves. And we have to discover these things one by one and crack those ceilings so that we can get to the final view of the Madhyamaka Prasangika view. Preferably then coupled with the highest yoga tantra, which again is so far away from where I am, but is somewhere I will go because I want to become a Buddha, in theory, and I want to do it more than other things in my life. I don't have bodhicitta, but I definitely want it more than that kid wanted the bike. That's a pretty good gauge. But it's not in like a way that I day and night feel like some kind of dissatisfaction because I didn't get bodhicitta. It's more of an excitement. It's that I can if I do this, And as I do it, it makes more sense that I can. And implicitly within this, hidden within this, we find the five paths of accumulation, preparation, seeing, meditation, and no more learning that the bodhisattva in this case goes through. There's five paths for hearers and solitary realizers, but from a Mahayanist perspective, this is a Mahayana teaching. These five paths of five Mahayana paths, that four causal, one resultant. Accumulation, preparation, seeing, path of meditation being causal, path of no more learning being the resultant state. Okay. Suture of the Heart of Transcendent Knowledge. Thus have I heard once the Blessed One was dwelling in Rajagriha at Vulture Peak Mountain together with a great gathering of the Sangha of monks, a great gathering of the Sangha of Bodhisattvas. At that time, the Blessed One entered the Samadhi that expresses the Dharma called profound illumination, and at the same time, noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, while practicing the profound Prajaparamita, saw in this way. He saw the five skandhas to be empty of nature. Then, through the power of the Buddha, Venerable Shariputra said to noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, how should a son or daughter of noble family train who wishes to practice a profound Prajaparamita? Addressed in this way, noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, said to Venerable Shariputra, O Shariputra, son or daughter of noble family who wishes to practice a profound Prajaparamita should see in this way. Seeing the five skandhas to be empty of nature, form is emptiness. Emptiness also is form. Emptiness is no other than form. Form is no other than emptiness. In the same way, feeling, discrimination, compositional factors, and consciousness are emptiness. Thus, Shariputra, all dharmas are emptiness. There are no characteristics. There is no birth and no cessation. There is no impurity and no purity. There is no decrease and no increase. Therefore, Shariputra, in emptiness, there is no form, no feeling, no form, no feeling, no discrimination, no compositional factors, no consciousness, no eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mind, no appearance, no sound, no smell, no taste, no touch. No dharmas, no I dhatu, up to no mind dhatu, no dhatu of dharmas, no mind consciousness dhatu, no ignorance, no end of ignorance, up to no old age and death, no end of old age and death, no suffering, no origin of suffering, no cessation of suffering, no path, no wisdom, no attainment, and no non-attainment. Therefore, Shariputra, since the bodhisattvas have no attainment, they abide by means of Prajaparamita. Since there is no obscuration of mind, there is no fear. The obscuration of mind would be thinking that there is something in the universe that exists ultimately. The Four Noble Truths don't exist ultimately. So you see that this point that's being made. And the attainments or the non-attainments, they don't exist ultimately. They don't exist intrinsically. Therefore, since the bodhisattvas have no attainment, they abide by means of prajnaparamita. And since there's no obscuration of their mind, there is no fear. They transcend falsity, the falsity of believing things intrinsically exist. They transcend it. And by doing so, they attain complete nirvana. They stop apprehending things as intrinsically existent. And by stopping that apprehension completely at its most subtle apprehension level, one achieves nirvana. All the Buddhas of the three times, by means of the perfection of wisdom, they all did it by relying upon the idea that things don't intrinsically exist as bodhisattvas. Fully awakened to unsurpassable, awaken. Buddha means awakened one. Buddha means to wake up open, wake up omniscient. You fully awaken. You become a Buddha, fully awakened to unsurpassable, the highest amount of happiness, the complete suffering, and the highest reliability. It's unsurpassable, true, complete enlightenment. There isn't more. It's the final, it's perfection. Therefore, the great mantra of Prajnaparamita, the mantra of great insight, the unsurpassed mantra, the unequal mantra, the mantra that calms all suffering should be known as truth, since there's no deception. The Prajnaparamita mantra is said in this way. So ignorance is deception. It's a veil. And wisdom is a discerning mind whose apprehension of objects tallies with reality. So we have to realize with wisdom the mode of existence of all reality, because we're currently being deceived by thinking the mode of existence is intrinsic existence. The Prajnaparamita mantra is said in this way: Teata om gate gate paragate parasangate bodhisoha. Thus Shariputra, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, should train in the profound Prajnaparamita. Then the Blessed One arose from that samadhi and praised noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, saying, Good, O son of noble family, thus it is, O son of noble family, thus it is. One should practice the profound Prajnaparamita just as you have taught, and all the Tathagatas will rejoice. When the Blessed One had said this, Venerable Shariputra and noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, that whole assembly in the world with its gods, humans, asuras, and Gandharvas, rejoiced and praised the words of the Blessed One. And don't forget, when I say that, you could invite all of the high beings, even, high bodhisattvas here, and imagine that this language is in their aptitude, exactly what they need to hear. You see at the end of the Heart Sutra that the Buddha is doing just that. And when we learn about the Perfection of Wisdom Sutra, the second turning of the wheel of Dharma, The Buddha is simultaneously teaching this perfection of wisdom sutra also in 100,000 verses, also in 20,000, 8,000, in some other thousands verses, and then this version, and then one syllable, ah, and at the same time teaching Kala Chakra in South India while he's in Bodh Gaya. He's emanating a Srikala Chakra in South India. So we see that when we say in the language of gods, nagas, and yaksas, the language of demons and of humans too, where and whatever kind of speech there may be, any kind of speech that there is, even I don't know, what is the Bodhisattva, what's the Buddha, we're saying Sanskrit, right? In the Ugman, Pure Land, where the Bodhisattva, Arya Bodhisattvas are getting taught. So, the bodhisattvas who've realized emptiness can go to a special place called Ogmin, where there's only Arya bodhisattvas and Mahayana teachings being given until sentient beings are no more, and the Buddha's teaching the Mahayana only to these beings and so forth. So they're Buddha's teaching in Sanskrit. So we're imagining they're getting that in Sanskrit too. So anyway, we really are handicapped, is my point, by our lack of aptitude, lack of skills with a Z. Yeah, we don't have them. We need a lot more of them if we want to help. And if we want to help in a real way, we need to not be so attached to ourselves and not have so much self-cherishing. Kala jube ne jo damba ne nguje du ju nga yi du do jen ju baba lama yi bu shin zi ne sung gandro so la sha zelo aga zamaro je sandro zamaro vega zamaro aga zamaro je sandro zamaro ya be te ya ta on ka te para sanga de bode so baba konju son ji ga ye de me do ji je lo bodo ji me bodo ji se wa de ji da gi ba ji me de be ji dan ji je den kori so ha kirin don ja je je wa da me do ne be ju na no wa dan de ma de ni mon so de ji da ji de jan den da de le so requests for teaching. Of course, we've been giving a teaching, but you all know my style. This motivation set, it takes more than the teaching. And that was the teaching too. So one of my students really strongly feels that we should just open with a mandala offering because you're just going to start teaching. And yeah, I asked from Khensur Geshe Wangdak, and he said, "You do whatever you want," which wasn't helpful because then I have this, which should I do? So this is what I do. The fundamental ground is scented with incense and strewn with flowers, adorned with Mount Meru, the four continents, the sun, and the moon. I imagine this is a Buddha land and offer it. May all sentient beings enjoy this pure realm. Holy Lamas high, wrap the sky of your Dharma bodies in massive clouds of knowledge and love, and let them pour upon the earth of your disciples as we are ready, a shower of rain, the teachings deep and wide. I send forth this jeweled mandala to you, precious Guru. Sanjay Jadan Zadi Jadan La Jaji Badu Dani Jazuji Dagi Juji Jibe Zanan Jidro La Benje Sanjay Jubasho Sanjay Jadan Zadi Jadan La Jaji Badu Dani Jazuji Dagi Juji Jibe Zanan Jidro La Benje Sanjay Jubasho Sanjay Jadan Zadi Jadan La Jaji Badu Dani Jazuji Dagi Juji Jibe Zanan Jidro La Benje Sanjay Jubasho. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha by my accumulation. Since I create by teaching the Dharma, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. Now let's recite the foundation of all good qualities, the source of all my good by Lama Tsongkhapa. This is the guideline that we've been using for these teachings. We reached the section on bodhicitta 2 years ago, and we just stayed there. And it's been so fantastic. And before that, I think you will all agree that we went into suffering and the origin of suffering and the different 8, 6, 3 sufferings and why samsara stinks and why we need to get out and why it's uncertain and how that uncertainty helps us with our bodhicitta practice. So we've really, I think, done a good job at least having the material that can change our minds. Whether they changed or not over these years since Rinpoche's passed, that's, yeah, it's your thing. That's for you to meditate and you to find out. As Acharya Dharmakirti says, is the worst thing I could ever do is judge another person. We don't know who's a Buddha, who's not a Buddha. I can only judge my own mind. I don't know where anybody else is at. But the source of all my good is a very safe text because it's a complete text. It contains complete information and it's shown in a systematic way how we would evolve into enlightenment, into an enlightened being, what we would need to do to have a higher realm rebirth, what we would need to do to get out of samsara, and what we would need to do to not only get out of samsara, but do so as a, as a Buddha. You're out of samsara before you're a Buddha on the eighth ground, I guess. I hear the debate. Anyway, I'm like poisoned by all of these. Well, what about this? When I'm even when I'm talking, I hear the snazzy geshes, you know, getting all fired up at any kind of statement. But that's what they're there for. They're there for us to say, do we really know what we're talking about? Am I really combating my self-cherishing attitude and self-grasping ignorance, or am I enhancing them? And this is what good teachers do for us. The source of all my good. The source of all my good is my kind Lama, my Lord. Bless me first to see taking myself to them in the proper ways, the very root of the path, and grant me then to serve and follow them with all my strength and reverence. Bless me to realize that the excellent life of leisure I found just this once is ever so hard to find and ever so valuable. Grant me then to wish and never stop to wish that I could take its essence night and day. My body and the life in it are fleeting as the bubbles in the sea froth of a wave. Bless me first thus to recall the death that will destroy me soon, and help me find sure knowledge that after I have died, the things I have done, the white or black, and what those deeds bring to me, follow always close behind, as certain as my shadow. Grant me then ever to be careful to stop the slightest wrongs of the many wrongs we do, and try to carry out instead each and every good of the many that we may. Bless me to perceive all that's wrong with the seemingly good things of this life, of this world, of samsara. I can never get enough of them. They can't be trusted. They are the door to every pain I have. Grant me then to strive instead for the happiness of freedom, the happiness of liberation. Grant that these pure thoughts may lead me to be watchful and to recall what I should be doing. Grant me to give the greatest care to make the vows of the pradamoksha the essence of my practice. They're the root of Buddhist teachings. So instead of striving for samsara, may I strive for liberation, the opposite of samsara. Strive for nirvana. I have slipped and fallen into the sea of this suffering life. Now that I realized I need to strive for nirvana, what about everyone else? Bless me to see that every living being, everyone my own mother, has fallen into. Grant me then to practice the wish for enlightenment, to take on myself the task of freeing them all. Bless me to see clearly that this wish itself is not enough, for if I'm not well trained in the three moralities, I can't become a Buddha. Grant me then a fierce resolve to master the Bodhisattva vows. So once I say, I want to become a Buddha for the sake of all sentient beings, I got to then do something. So if I don't do something, just wishing isn't enough. So that wish will automatically, some say the next moment, but how long's a moment? What's your measure of a moment? Yeah, here we go again. Some say the next moment you just engage. Others say, well, you've got to take the bodhisattva vow, and that's the measure of your engaged bodhicitta. You decide. Study a lot of books, and you decide. Grant then that I quickly gain the path where quietude and insight join together, one which quiets my mind from being distracted to wrong objects, the other which analyzes the perfect meaning in the correct way. Grant that once I practice well the path that's shared and become a vessel that's worthy, I enter with perfect ease the way of the diamond, highest of all ways, holiest door to come inside for the fortune and good. And for any of you who are new or don't know, this means Vajrayana, Tantrayana. And it's saying that Tantrayana doesn't work unless you have the common paths. Tantrayana, you don't start at Tantrayana. You have the common paths that serve as a foundation for Tantrayana to work. Tantrayana without common paths is just imagination. We can do imagination without Tantrayana. We just go to sleep, we do imagination. Bless me to know the genuine certainty that when I've entered thus, the cause that gives me both the highest attainments is to keep my pledges and my vows most pure. Grant me then to keep them always at the cost of my life. Yeah, so we can come inside. It says, enter with perfect ease the way of the diamond, highest of all ways, holiest door, to come inside for the fortunate and good. That door does not open. You can pretend you opened it and went inside, but you didn't actually go inside unless you're fortunate and good, meaning that you've taken advantage of your life of leisure and opportunity by engaging in the path shared in common with Tantrayana. Bless me next to realize as well as I can the crucial points of both the steps, the essence of the secret ways. Grant me that then to practice as the holy ones have spoken, putting all my effort in and never leaving off. Practice of the 4 times highest that there is. Bless me, grant me that the spiritual friend who shows me this good road and all my true companions in this quest live long and fruitful lives. Bless and grant me that the rain of obstacles, things without me, within me or outside me that could stop me now, stop and end forever. In all my lives, may I never live apart from my perfect lamas. May I bask in the glory of the Dharma. May I fulfill perfectly every good quality of every level and path and reach then quickly the place where I become myself, the one who holds the diamond. And we really mean this when we say this. May our true companions in this quest live long and fruitful lives. We need good friends. We need good friends that aren't just Gewe Shenyan, spiritual friends like a Geshe or our teachers. We need good friends that are like-minded, that aren't going to lead us in the wrong way, that are interested in hearing about what matters. And my being able to give this talk depends upon you wanting to hear this talk. And so my evolution, my maturation has been maybe it's super slow moving. I don't know. Is it slow? Is it fast? I only know my own mind. But my maturation in the ways that it's been able to do, or my knowledge has increased at least, has depended upon you. And if everyone on this screen suddenly disappeared, then I wouldn't have any reason to give this talk that's improved the quality of my mind, improved the quality of my life immensely. So I want to say thank you. And if you all, may you live long lives. If you all just drop dead right now, I just have to hit end. You see what I mean? So we have to really care about each other and know we rely on each other. And they even tell you when you go into a retreat, if you're new, to make sure you have some folks around and not to just do it alone. You need good friends to say, hey, you're going like a little off, or you're not making sense, just to try to help guide you and pull you back. And I really appreciate the fact that I have Lorinda in my life. We're both spiritually inclined, meaning we want to, become better. We want to evolve in this tradition. So, we are able to, help each other, you know, point out, and it's not always comfortable, but point out those things that would help improve. And we're both interested in improving, so it's a positive thing. Um, so when we talk about bodhicitta, it's something that it's easy to talk about, easy to list things, and very difficult when the rubber meets the road to put into practice. Very easy to put into practice when everything's real blissy and yummy, and there's not a whole lot going on. It's difficult. We're talking about cherishing others and expanding our minds and all that good, yummy stuff. It sounds so easy and it's so easy to talk about. But when we see what the entailment of this is, or we see what this really means about, it says right at the beginning of this teaching on exchanging self with others that um, so we're switching. It says so you're supposed to be able to develop the attitude of cherishing others as you presently do yourself and neglect yourself as you presently do others. Ready, go. So that's just to get to the point where we create causes to become a bodhisattva. These are this like coming convinced of that cause is what causes you to become a bodhisattva. That doesn't even mean that you're a bodhisattva if you've become convinced of that. So we've been looking at the equalizing and exchanging self with others practice in Lama Tsongkhapa's great treatise on the stage of the path to enlightenment. In the section on bodhicitta, the first Lama Tsongkhapa goes over 7-point cause and effect, and then goes over equalizing and exchanging self with others, and of course says he's going to explain it according to Bodhisattva Shantideva's tradition, the guide to the Bodhisattva's way of life, and then also the compendium of trainings we see as an accompanying text according to Minyak Kunsan Sunam, the way that it gets explained. Bodhisattva Shantideva, some say, wanted you to read those two texts together. And when Bodhisattva Shantideva disappeared after teaching the guide to the Bodhisattva's way of life, that's the story we've told before. When they went back to his room, they found the compendium of trainings, which was a large text with a lot of sutra quotes in it. Hold on, I have to prove I'm not a robot. I did it. Yes. Another week has passed and I have not turned into a robot. Yeah. Everyone's worried about these things, AI, and yeah, I didn't do it. I'm still able to slide a puzzle piece. Yeah. Yeah. So anyway, we've been looking at the Lama Tsongkhapa's text and looking at exchanging self with others and looking at the various points that are put in here. And we've went over the section first to show us what what is a first we learned that hey, if you accustom yourself to the thought of exchanging self with others, you can do it. Um, and then we've then started to look at the stages that you go through, and we start to see the equality of self and other. And then we're going to see the downfalls of cherishing yourself and the benefits of cherishing other. And then we're going to see Tonglen, giving and taking practice. Then we're going to see an actual exchange of self and other. Then we're going to see thinking about the great kindness of all. Then we're going to see an actual altruistic intention to take away suffering and give others happiness, and then a conclusion that one must become a Buddha to do so. So Lama Tsongkhapa is going to guide us through this, and he starts with ultimate bodhicitta, and then some also conventional reasoning, but he starts with this idea of equality, of the emptiness of intrinsic existence of self and other, that there's no intrinsic difference between self and other, and that self is merely labeled in terms of a reference point, a perspective, and it's an other to someone from a different perspective. From your perspective, yourself. From someone else's perspective, their other. So it means that this basis of designation is super flexible and doesn't seem to be one with what it's being designated as, because it should always be self or other. So Lama Tsongkhapa insists that we start with this idea of emptiness to undo this idea that there's a reason to have this concrete idea that I should cherish myself more than others. So that I should start from a premise that if I'm a concrete I, then I better cherish myself. Lama Tsongkhapa says, well, let's undo that idea of a concrete self, concrete other. And then, because that's an obstacle to you being able to evolve to becoming a bodhisattva, let's undo that. And when we look at Acharya Dharmakirti's Pramanavartika Karika, he makes a really, really strong argument for this. Well, explains it in a way in a lot of different places. In the second chapter, there's the quote that says, "First you see yourself, then you see other. Um, from this bifurcation, attachment and aversion ensue. From all of that, killing and all other sorts of non-virtue occur, and samsara revolves." Something to this effect. We can look up the exact quote. It's pretty close. And then we find two other quotes that I thought were really, really applicable to this. No contradiction exists between seeing the selflessness of person and the knowledge of the suffering of beings. The arhats generate love towards the beings who are designated on the phenomena of the aggregates, which came into being due to the earlier composition of afflictions and karma. Here it is. Attachment arises due to reification of self and others on the basis of phenomena that lack selfhood. So we have this basis. We have this basis of designation, but we say, this is Jeff, but when we move closer to this basis of designation that I'm saying is Jeff, we don't find an intrinsically existent Jeff. So we're becoming, this attachment arises due to reification of self and others, seeing an intrinsically existent self, intrinsically existent other, on a basis, a self or other, that has no intrinsic existence. And it says, arhats generate love towards the beings, realizing that they are merely imputed on the basis of the continuum of the aggregates of suffering nature. So there's a connection here. Realizing that I'm merely imputed in dependence upon a collection of among the 4 or 5 aggregates that serve as a collection. You're merely imputed. That the Jeff and this basis of designation are mutually exclusive. Self, other can be applied to the same basis of designation depending on a perspective. So we start to look at, without the perspective of other, I can't even posit self. Without the perspective of long, I can't posit short, as Arya Nagarjuna says. So this perspective, there's an interdependence in relation to me and you in order for me to even posit me. Just like there's an interdependence on this collection of my parts, whereas it makes sense because there's a person here that is this collection that's just a basis of designation. Because there's interdependence, it makes sense if I get a thorn in my foot for my hand to take it out, even though my hand is other than my foot. So there's reasoning. Some of it'll hit, some of it won't hit. And that's why there's so much needed, because there aren't a million different examples because one will get everybody. There's a million different examples because some will get you, some will get me, some will get others. And if these great beings put enough out there that are logical and that makes sense, then it's going to absolutely affect a mind. And it's going to connect with some karma you previously had that will make it all make sense. And then maybe something can cut through. It doesn't cut through because magic happens. It cuts through because you did the work for a cooperative condition to be there for you to experience something you'd never experienced before. So there's a real connection to the emptiness enhances compassion, and then your compassion enhances the need for you to understand emptiness. There's a real interdependence between this, and this is the points that are being made. So we talked about, so I want to reread this part. After you've eliminated the obstacles to exchanging self and other in this way, so the obstacles we saw, the headings are making a categorical differentiation between people who are happy or suffering, yourself and others. So you're making a categorical differentiation and making them as different as blue and yellow. But blue you can't say is sometimes yellow, right? Okay, so anyway, then you accomplish just your happiness because you think of the suffering that you experience as separate, intrinsically not dependent, yeah, uh, from someone else's whose is intrinsically not dependent. So there's a categorical differentiation that's made. And then the second obstacle is thinking that, oh, well, why would I remove the suffering of others? That's other. It doesn't harm me. And then the thorn in my foot doesn't harm my hand, but there's a dependence there, so it makes sense for me to pull it out. And the guy who's going to be hungry at lunch if I don't eat breakfast isn't making the person at breakfast suffer, but it makes sense for the guy at breakfast to eat so that the guy who's a different person, right? Cellularly, everything, Jeff at noon and Jeff in the morning, different. It, that's other. If I'm self now, that's other because that's not experienced yet. Those aggregates aren't even the ones I have aren't the same as those are gonna be, right? So why would it make sense for me to be sure to eat a good breakfast so, I'm not starving at lunch because I know I won't have time for a lunch break. Wouldn't make sense for me to even do any of that because that guy who's not going to have time for a lunch break that's hungry isn't going to affect me now if I don't eat. So, and in my future lives, that person that's maybe a faithful dog in my future life, or maybe I'll get to be a human if I play my cards right. Um, that won't be me. That will be I in an instance of this I, but there's no way I can say there's a common locus between Jeff and a dog. It's just two different realms. But I'm willing to try to accumulate stuff so that that person in the future does okay, right? Um, and that person in the future has no effect on me, but I'm willing to benefit other. Okay, so just some thinking may or may not make sense. So after you've eliminated the obstacles, these are the ones we're talking about, we're intrinsically different. Hey, your suffering doesn't affect me, you're other. Once you get rid of these obstacles using some logic that It's tough logic, I have to say. It's not logic that's like, oh yeah, that makes total sense, and you just move on, and now your obstacles are removed. We're talking about emptiness in here. So it's just scratching, like Geshe Dorji Damdul says, scratching away at it. And eventually, if you scratch enough at a rock, Arya Sangha learned that a feather could wear away at a place in a rock if it moved over it enough. And water could make a indent in a rock if it dripped in it enough. If we drip in our minds this information enough, it's going to make a dent in our self-cherishing attitude, in our self-grasping ignorance. So so after you've eliminated these obstacles to exchanging self and other in this way, the actual way to meditate is as follows. So it's almost like this is a preliminary step, um, kind of. But the step where we look at the 9 steps, the first step is equalizing self and other. And we're going to look at so many commentaries. I'm not going to get in the weeds here about this. Out of attachment to self, your self-cherishing attitude has produced all sorts of undesirable things throughout the beginningless time of cyclic existence up to now. Although you wanted to make things perfect for yourself, you emphasized your own welfare and engaged in improper methods. Yeah, right. So I should have, given my bike to the kid who had the bike that wasn't as nice, instead of, thinking about how I could get Dorian, that was the guy's name, the professional racer, even had a cool name, Dorian's bike. Yeah. Dorian Bowie, if you're out there. Yeah. I really liked your Robinson bicycle. But, I thought that the Robinson bicycle was going to make me happier, getting, another a uni seat for my red line that wasn't as nice as the Robinson would spruce it up enough, and then I'd be happy. But little did I know that the guy who had the crappier bike in my neighborhood by conventional standards, who wanted my bike, if I gave him my bike, I would have been engaging in a proper method to being happy. You have spent countless eons at this. So for countless eons, I've been messing that up. I've been as foolish as that fourth grader on his BMX bike and getting it wrong. Not only have you not achieved these, you have been tormented only, and fill in the blanks with so many other things. I was just trying to make a cute story for y'all. But there's a bunch of nasty stuff you could talk about that you do to try to be happy that then blows up. And then you pretend that, oh, well, there'll be another way. There's another way. You've spent countless eons but haven't accomplished your own or others' aims. Not only have you not achieved this, you have been tormented only by suffering. When we look at suffering and we know what suffering is, the contaminated happiness that we experience in samsara is suffering. And that's all we've gotten, mouthfuls of it. If you had replaced concern for your own welfare with the concern for others, you would have already become a Buddha long ago and would have completely and perfectly accomplished your own aims as well as those of others. As you did not do this, you have spent your time uselessly and laboriously. So the downfalls of the self-cherishing attitude, if we're looking at the enumeration. So we just learned about the equality of self and other. Everyone wants happiness, no one wants suffering, and we're both empty of intrinsic existence, and self depends upon other. Now, we're finding that we've tried to cherish ourselves since beginningless time, and it's brought us no fruit. It's only brought us misery. It's only, it's accomplished suffering for us. That's all we've gotten out of it. And we've used that time uselessly and laboriously. So everything that we've done is useless because we wanted it to achieve something it didn't. And we engaged. It was so much work we put in to get these things that would make us happy, and it was for naught. They did nothing that we thought they would do for us. So we've useless labor since beginningless time. And that useless labor has produced, here I am in cyclic existence. And the beings who have had concern for others, like His Holiness the Dalai Lama, the Bodhisattvas and Buddhas, the Bodhisattvas, by cherishing others, became Buddhas. And it says that if we had learned this trick, we would have been a Buddha a long time ago. But no, we're not. Here we are, 2026, not Buddha. Yeah. 2026, not Buddha, and a very big reason why. We haven't gotten rid of self-grasping ignorance and self-cherishing attitude. Make a firm determination by thinking, now I understand the faults of self-cherishing and the benefits of cherishing others. And there, in Pabunga Rinpoche's commentary, and in the commentary is by Nankapel, we're going to find out how bad the self-cherishing attitude and the benefits of cherishing others are. Lama Tsongkhapa doesn't do a lot with it, but we'll learn. With great effort, relying on mindfulness and vigilance. So I'm supposed to be saying that the self-cherishing attitude is no good and I'm supposed to be cherishing others. That's my mindfulness. That's what I'm not supposed to forget. That's mindfulness, not forgetting the object. My object of my mind is to cherish others. There should be vigilance, which I translate as introspection, which is a spy in the mind, making sure that the job is getting done. A spy isn't really present, isn't known. It's just kind of checking things out. It's in the corner of the mind, seeing if, hey, am I cherishing others? Am I thinking of cherishing others? And if I'm thinking of cherishing myself, an alarm should go off to say, hey, mindfulness, go get the cherishing others mind back. Like if you lost a pet dog and someone's like, hey, Jeff, and you're not supposed to lose your pet dog, and somebody yells, you lost your pet dog. If you had a spy in your mind making sure you didn't lose your pet dog, or somebody could yell, hey, you lost your pet dog, then mindfulness would then go with a rope and tie it around and bring the dog's, neck. Not that sounds awful. Attach it to the collar of the dog and bring the dog home. Meaning, bring this cherishing others attitude back. With great effort, relying on mindfulness and introspection. I will discontinue the present self-cherishing. This is what I'm not supposed to forget. This is my mindfulness. I'm going to discontinue the present self-cherishing. The self-cherishing is my greatest enemy. I'm not going to forget this. I will not allow the present self-cherishing entity, I will discontinue the present self-cherishing attitude. Don't forget that. That's mindfulness. It's my greatest enemy. Don't forget that. That's mindfulness. And I will not allow any potential self-cherishing to arise. That's what I'm going to remember. Now I have a little spy in my mind making sure that this is what's happening. And it says, in this way, frequently stop self-cherishing. So this spy in the mind is seeing, hey, are you trying to discontinue self-cherishing that's your greatest enemy, or engaging in self-cherishing? Because if you're engaging in self-cherishing, mindfulness needs to be alerted to do its job, because the introspection was doing its job and caught mindfulness sleeping on the job. That's how our mind works. And that's how we work with our mind. And then we'll just close with this quote. In this way, frequently stop self-cherishing. Engaging in the Bodhisattva deed, says, a guide to the Bodhisattva way of life. Self-cherishing has harmed me in all my myriad lifetimes in cyclic existence. You, O mind, though you spent countless eons wanting to accomplish your own welfare, through such great hardship, you have accomplished only suffering. If formerly you had acted for others' welfare, this condition, which lacks the perfect happiness of Buddhahood, could not possibly have occurred. If formerly you had acted for others' welfare, this condition, which lacks the perfect Buddha, the absence of Buddhahood, couldn't be occurring right now if you formerly acted for others' welfare. So the absence of Buddhahood that I have, there wouldn't be an absence of Buddhahood, there'd be a Buddhahood here if I had done what I was supposed to be doing according to the Buddha. But since I haven't, there is an absence of Buddhahood here. That's cool. Thus, neither be self-centered nor support self-centered tendencies. You must train again and again in the attitude of freely giving to all beings your own body, resources, and roots of virtue, and you must work for the welfare of those to whom you give these things. So not only you have to give everything away, you got to just be working for them at the same time. Yeah. Yeah, bodhicitta is simple. It is wrong to do the opposite. So stop the attitude which sees your own body, resources, and roots of virtue as being for your own purposes. So normally I'm thinking these hands are just to put stuff in my mouth and grab things that I want and touch things that are soft. Now these hands are supposed to somehow be working to help others. My legs are supposed to be walking somewhere to be benefiting others instead of walking somewhere to get something for me so that I feel better. I'm supposed to be walking somewhere to you so that you feel better. I'm supposed to be using these limbs. When we say we give our body, speech, and mind to the Buddha, that doesn't mean the Buddha's like we're a cannibal, we're giving it, to consume. It means that what the Buddha says I should do with my speech, I submit, I'll say that. What the Buddha says I should do with my body, I submit, I'll do that. You know, and what the Buddha says that I should be thinking, I submit. I'll think like that. And this is because I want to become a Buddha. And if I don't start somewhere, start submitting, then in the littlest ways, the big submission, which is giving up addiction to cyclic existence, will never happen. So, yeah, I really appreciate all of you being here this evening. I hope this was helpful. I know it's an enormous amount of information, but we need it. We need this enormous amount of information if we want to establish what is the object of negation. How do I get bodhicitta? Why is samsara no good? We have to be thoroughly convinced. We can't just say samsara stinks because there's pain and people die. This is just the suffering of suffering. And as soon as the intensity of suffering is gone, then if we thought we had renunciation and just wanted to throw ourselves into spiritual life, then once that suffering of suffering is gone and we're experiencing what we think is happiness again, our spirituality can go right out the window because we never had renunciation in the first place. Because renunciation is renouncing cyclic existence, renouncing the self grasping ignorance that believes in samsara. So, anyway, that's enough of that. Let's do the dedication and concluding mandala offering and dedication prayer. Any mistakes that I've made, may they be purified by this mantra of Vajrasattva. I don't think that I've made any mistakes, but I'm not a Buddha. I could have made mistakes in speaking in error. And I also made a mistake of teaching not to your scope, because even though I want to be able to um, teach in the language and the aptitudes of all beings, I'm not an enlightened being and I don't have clairvoyance. So I may have made the mistake of disclosing too much or not disclosing enough. And this is my handicap as an ordinary being. And this is why in order to become fully reliable, we have to become a Buddha. So any mistakes that I've made, I apologize. Om benza sada samaya minu balaya benza sada zeno bajija dida me baba suto gaya me baba zubo gaya me baba no radu me baba zava zidi me braja zava gama zuja me gidam shiyam kuru hao bhagavan zava dada gada benza mame moga benza baba ma zamaya zava om ve jorama 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 jujagala raja marama jada jajinjara rilu ong om. Fundamental ground is scented with incense and strewn with flowers, adorned with Mount Meru, the four continents, the sun, and the moon. Imagine this as a Buddha land and offer it. May all sentient beings enjoy this pure realm. I dedicate whatever virtues I've collected for the benefit of the teachings of all sentient beings, and in particular for the essential teachings of Venerable Losang Drapa to shine forever. I send forth this jeweled mandala to you, precious Guru. I dedicate all this virtue to emulate the knowledge of the hero Manjushri and likewise Samantabhadra as well. With whatever dedication is praised as supreme by all the conquerors who traverse the three times, I also dedicate all my roots of virtue for the sake of auspicious deeds. May the supreme jewel bodhicitta that has not arisen arise and grow, and may that which has arisen not diminish but increase forevermore. Through this virtuous action, may I quickly attain the state of a Guru Buddha and lead every being without exception into that enlightened state. In all my lives, may I never be separated from my perfect lamas. May I bask in the glory of the Dharma. May I fulfill perfectly every good quality of every level and path, and reach then quickly the place where I become myself, the one who holds the diamond. If you're attached to this life, you're not a spiritual practitioner. If you're attached to samsara, you have no renunciation. If you're attached to your own self-interest, you have no bodhicitta. If there is grasping, you do not have the view. From my two collections, vast as space, that I have amassed from working at this practice for a great length of time, may I become the chief leading Buddha for all those whose mind's wisdom eye is blinded by ignorance. In the heavenly realm of Tibet, surrounded by a chain of snow mountains, you are the source of all benefit and happiness for beings. All-powerful, Chen Rezig, Tenzin Gyatso, please remain until samsara ends. And a prayer of supplication and a request to come back to Namgyal Khensur Geshe Wangdak Rinpoche, called A Complex Yogi Poses as a Simple Monk. Homage to Namgyal Khensur Geshe Wangdak Rinpoche, our precious spiritual friend who is inseparable from Aryatara. I fully prostrate, covering as many atoms of the earth as possible to your pure body, speech, mind, and enlightened activities. I offer to you drinking water, bathing water, flowers, incense, candles, scented water, food, and music purified by Om Ah Om, Om Ah Om, Om Ah Om. The rarity of having 1 million wish-fulfilling gems is a common occurrence compared to meeting with a holy teacher like you who placed the complete path to Buddhahood in our childlike hands. Just like Lord Atisha, who came to Tibet with a lamp to dispel the darkness of ignorance, you, kind abbot, arrived in the West with a lineage purer than a diamond and begged us never to be satisfied with partial instructions. Teachings of the extensive deeds lineage and profound view lineages flowed from your lips like nectar for our ears that elucidated the teachings for beings of three capacities. Now that sound has stopped. All composite things are impermanent. You told us that all of your teachers passed away and understood this sadness, entreating us to continue our studies. The Buddha does not wash away the negativities of beings, nor does he remove their miseries by his hands. His spiritual realizations are not transferred to them. It is by teaching the truth of suchness that beings are liberated. We are not prepared to take this difficult journey to the highest goodness of Buddhahood without your continued guidance. The sadness in our heart would be too overwhelming. May you swiftly return to this world and take care of us in all of our lives, wherever we may be, never leaving our hearts and our crowns. May all sentient beings perfectly realize renunciation, bodhicitta, and the correct view of emptiness, so they know who you really are. Thank you so much, everyone, for your kind listening. Just remember to keep everyone who's suffering in your thoughts, who's sick in your thoughts, who has any kind of obstacles in your thoughts. And if you have any way to remove their suffering or try to help them, be kind to them in a little bit, try to do so because it really means a lot to them. All right. Take care. Thank you so much.